When it comes to anime, most people talk about animation when it comes to visual quality. But what if I told you there's a process that's even more important when it comes to an anime's overall visual quality? And that's compositing. In anime, compositing acts as the glue which brings everything together, but it also acts as its own creative art form in itself. Let me explain how it works. Anime is normally made up of many different layers, such as backgrounds, characters, textures, lighting, effects, just to name a few. And compositing is the process of managing all these layers and how they interact with one another. And because of this, it's really important for the show's overall visual style, and when done poorly, can make a show feel really off, or even ruin really good animation. And this is because compositing plays a large part in creating movement. Let me give you an example. We want to make an anime character walk, right? So step 1, you make the character's animation walk cycle. So this is just a few drawings of them walking, so it looks like they're walking, right? Now you put this on a blank page and nothing's happening, and it looks dumb because they're doing the movement but they're not actually going anywhere. So in compositing, you'll add the background and then you'll move that background left, right, whichever way the character's going, and then it actually looks like the character's moving in the world. We can look at this example again, just a little different. This time, instead of the background moving, we're just going to drag the character along the screen whilst they're doing the animation cycle. So now it looks like the camera's static whilst the character's moving, whilst in the prior example it looked like the camera was moving along with the character. And that's just a very simple part of basic compositing. Of course, in a real anime there's a lot more to manage, there's probably a lot more characters, effects and stuff like that, but that's very raw. But this has been made a lot more simple and easier in modern times thanks to software used by the photography team, the department that does compositing. The photography team doesn't make much sense when you think about anime, and that's because it's a name that comes from a pre-digital era. Now, back in the good old days, the photography department did just that. Take photographs. And here's a little bit of basic anime history. Anime used to be drawn on cells, which are then painted by, I can't remember who, but they're probably something to do, has painted in the name. Yeah. Then the cells, the background, and any other drawing for the scene was placed on the animation stand, which was a stand with a camera at the top pointing down and many different layers. Kind of like, here's a photo. These stands then allowed for the drawings to be moved horizontally, so they can make that moving effect in real time, and all the layers had lights on so no shadows would get in. And this was how the photography team would composite old anime. They would manage the animation stance layers, move any layers horizontally, and any effects that needed to be added were done physically. And that's why compositing is done by the photography department. There's your little history class. Now get out my bathroom, bitches. Even though the photography department now uses software, the process of compositing has actually become more complex. And this isn't because the software is harder to use, it's just that there's a lot more things that the compositing department now has to deal with. And this is in part thanks to the large use of 3D CGI in anime over the last 2 decades. And anyone who's seen anime with CGI in will be able to tell you that the combination of 2D and 3D is really hard to pull off. And seeing as compositing is the glue in anime production, it requires a lot of communication and collaboration between different departments and different teams. Because of this, the time available and communication plays a massive part in what makes compositing look good. And it's a lack of these two things that can lead to poor compositing even in the biggest of projects. An example of this is Mappa's Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1. JJK Season 1 was massive. It had a lot of the industry's best talent working on it, but it had some horrible compositing at times. And this is thanks to the 2 factors I mentioned earlier. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 was produced on a horrific schedule where they had absolutely no time at all. But Season 1 was also directed by Sung-woo Park. Even though he is an incredible director and an animator, his action is incredible, compositing and the overall direction of an anime when it comes to visuals isn't his strong suit. And you can see this in Season 1, where there's some really ugly backgrounds, some horrible colour and texture choices. Oh, and also the compositing just fucking breaks at some point. But you can compare Season 1 with the movie, which looks much better, much more visually cohesive. The compositing is very well, and that's probably thanks to it having a way better schedule. Not a good schedule, but a better schedule. But you can also compare it with Season 2, which was directed by Shota Goshizono. And I'm about to suck his dick so hard that you probably stop watching, but he is the GOAT, okay? No better director, in my opinion. Well, then, okay, that's very mean. Direction is very much a choice, but I love Shota. He's probably my top one. Can we get a Shota Zona fisheye effect right now? I don't know if I can do that. But when it comes to visuals, he is one of the most talented directors in the industry. And his eye for aesthetics led to better communication with the photography department, which then helped create a superior product. Obviously, we can't just put it all on directors. Teppei Ito, the head of photography for JJK, he was on season 1 and season 2. He also absolutely glowed up. He has put in a lot of work to improve, obviously. Like, he worked on JJK season 1, the movie, Chainsaw Man. You can see his progression. He's really talented as well. But obviously, it's not just communication, because in JJK season 2, which looks miles better, especially when it comes to the photography side, still had one horrible episode where it just didn't look that good compared to the rest of the season. So what exactly is bad compositing? Well, first, to recognize bad compositing, you have to know what the goal of compositing is. And that's to blend everything together and make sure they all interact correctly. And this might sound like the photography department just has to layer everything correctly and BAM! They're done. But just like everything in life, it's never that easy. And that's because all of the elements have to feel like they belong with one another. Otherwise, the viewer just won't be immersed. What the fuck am I doing? And this is done through creating depth in the image. And in my opinion, this is probably the most interesting part about compositing, and one of the most interesting parts about anime as a whole. And that is, anime is 2D. I know, shock horror, but it's also not 2D at the same time because it's 3D. But it doesn't feel 2D when you watch anime. Like, think about it, this is technically just an image you're watching, right? But you can still, it feels like I can go back here. It feels like you can touch something. But I'm not touching anything because this is a doorway, so there's nothing there for me to touch. Now, this depth is created in part by the animators when they're drawing the scene, because they can control things like the position, the angle, and the proportions of the character. This then, makes them feel further away or closer up. But compositing also has a part in this immersion as well. And the main way the photography department makes this depth is through blur and lighting. Blur is quite simple. It's used to simulate depth of field and focus, just like you'd see in a live action film. And then lighting, an example of this, is just like the beams of light you see in an anime. They're there to make depth. The lighting can also be used for vibrancy, where the characters in the front are more vibrant, whilst the background's a bit more dull. That way the characters in the front stand out more, and it makes them feel depth. This is a stain of paint on my floor. And if my mother asks, it has nothing to do with me. Anyway, when compositing is done really well, it becomes its own way of allowing creators to leave their impact on a project. One of the best examples of this is at Studio Ufotable. You love them, you might hate them for some reason. I don't know why you'd hate Ufotable. They're lovely guys over there. Trust me, my mate Dave works there. That's a lie. But Ufotable is one of the best in the industry, if not the best when it comes to compositing and digital technology. Yuichi Terao is the chief of the digital technology department, and he's also the director of photography at the studio. And under his leadership, the team has made one of the most iconic styles of compositing in the industry through their use of photorealism that emphasizes particle effects. His work is full of flashy effects, light, and that blue tone that's become synonymous with a lot of Ufotable shows. And this has led to Yuichi Terao's compositing being synonymous with Ufotable, but also with a number of series as well, such as Kyara no Kyokai, or even the Fate series. And Ufotable really is the pinnacle, and that's thanks to their business model, which deserves its own video. But they allow us to see exactly what photography departments can do when given the correct time and the correct circumstances overall. Yeah, and that's a large thanks, because Ufotable has hella good communication, because they're all in one studio. Like I said, Ufotable needs their own video. In the pipeline? I won't tell. There are many other directors of photography with their own quirks and styles, and I'd just like to acknowledge that I've very much generalised compositing and simplified a lot of it, so I'm sure there's stuff I've missed, even though I am really smart and really cool, so there's a low chance that I have, but just in case I have, I'm going to say that, so you take everything I say with like, not a pinch of salt, but like, don't take it to heart, take it to brain. Use your heads. And after all, compositing is an art form, which means there isn't a correct way to do it. The cop-out answer, yeah! An example of this is flat compositing, where, take a guess, you don't make the depth, you just make everything look flat. And there's a reason for this, it's to encourage the viewer's eyes to wander. It doesn't make your eyes focus on one point, so your eyes just look all around the screen. So you know what this means? It means, although bad compositing does exist, it doesn't mean there's a correct way to do it. Instead, bad compositing occurs when there is an intention and it's executed extremely poorly. Well, not even extremely, just poorly in general. I don't know why I say extremely. We like to use adjectives on this channel. Shout out English teachers. I just hope that you learned something about the animation process here and learned about all the love, passion and hard work that goes into creating the series that you sometimes jerk off to. If you did not jerk off, and you're still here, please consider subscribing. You literally just listened to me yap about compositing for how many minutes? I don't know. Bye bye now.